welcome to Chayah, Eishet, and I am your host, Chayah, and we are in the series, the Fall Scripture Study series, and it's on influential women of the Torah, and so it's only appropriate that we start with the first woman, and that is Miriam, who is the mother, who is blessed amongst all women, and the mother of Yahushua. And so that is what our discussion is going to be on today. And we're going to look at quite a few things about this woman and how she was influential in our life. And we need to understand the pains that she went through. And can you imagine that you are in your house, you have just been betrothed to your husband, and you're still with your family, but yet you get a visitation that an angel was sent to bring you a message. And more so, it was, I think, an offer, and it was allowed to choose whether she did or did not want to do this. And she was not unfamiliar with the Torah, and she did not. She was not unfamiliar with the presence of angels. She was not startled at the visit when he came. And when he also had prophesied for her that her cousin Elizabeth was with child, it was also, I think, as another way of confirmation that it truly was from heaven, because only heaven knew, because if you recall, in Shiva, she was barren for many years. And there is a teaching I'm going to be doing that probably is to Zechariah, and it's in about his reference to believers. And if we have heard from the prophets, we sometimes have a hard time believing what has been said to us. But for this episode, that's in another teaching. But for this, we're going to talk about this. And it took me a minute to really understand some things when he started showing me. So I have a better, I guess you call it a grip or understanding of what took place. And I'm going to try to distribute this to you to the best of my ability, and hope that you will be able to glean from this field. And so what I thought was only going to be one episode, it has gone possibly, well, I know it's gone to two, but it may end up going to three. We shall see. You ready? Let's begin. Good evening and welcome to Chayah for the Chosen, and I am your host, Shelia Janity Brown. And tonight's episode is part of a series for the women's ministry, Chayah Eishet Chayil, and the series is entitled Influential Women of Torah. So it is only befitting to start the first episode off with Miriam. She is the mother of Yahushua, and we want to talk about her in as much detail as I can give. I apologize, I had to move the date back for this because there was some discrepancies on some things that I had seen. And also, in addition to that, it appeared that as I got further into it, that this could not be just a one episode of this teaching. So therefore, I had to put it back for that reason, and also for some clarity that I needed before I taught on it. I don't teach anything to just sound good. I don't teach just to be teaching. I like to make sure that what you are receiving comes straight from heaven's throne room. And those things in which the Father has taught me or spoke to me, those things is what I deliver unto his people. So I'm going to get straight into this. I'm going to start off as I usually do. I'm going to start off with my prayer, and we're going to go right into this.
I mean, I take every spirit in the hearing of my voice under my control, that no other spirit except that of the Ruach HaKodesh would be allowed to speak or manifest during this time of ministry. Thou angels that thou hast given unto me, my troops, during this session shall cover me and to be deployed by me to battle or warfare as directed as it is your will, if it be so. They are fully armored in all areas, and so am I, as you have made it so, Abba. Those that have an ear to hear what thus saith Yehovah should receive four portions the messages from heaven's throne room. There is a hedge of protection shall be upon me during this session and upon the conclusion of this session of ministry. And no repercussions, demonic, demon attacks, thoughts, words of non-life, chants, spells, or anything that is contrary to what the Father deems for this vassal. And unto the people who hear, these things shall not come to pass. And no weapons that have been formed against us shall not prosper. No enemy, mentally, physically, spiritually, shall get to us during this session. Then we shall be fully restored in faith, health, thought, and ready to receive the next bounty, unto which shall be distributed upon your people and those seeking you. For we are girded with your faith, belief, your strength, your favor, your grace, your mercy, love, and your covering. So shall the words that go forth out of my mouth, they shall not return unto me void, and they shall accomplish that which pleases Abba, and it shall prosper in the things whereto they have been sent. Those of us who were unwed mothers that are in my age group or older understand the pain being pregnant out of wedlock. I was such a mother. Some of the pain you went through was not just only from the outside of the family talk, gossip, pointing fingers, staring, and whispers, turned heads, and some who treated you like you was a leper, but also the pain you may or may not have went through from your immediate family, or that you may have gone through from your immediate family. My story may not be as yours, but my mother condemned me more because of the embarrassment she went through or may have went through during this time in my life. Girls of my age were to be debutantes, introduced to society as available young women to marry well-to-do, available men in prominent families and of the community. It was a time of introduction, showcase of your special breeding and culture, manners, education, and so forth. All of this went out the window when I got pregnant at an early age of 14, mostly because my mother did not know how to talk to me about sexual intercourse. She literally told me the birds and the bees stories, and I looked at my mother with the look of, what are you talking about? Those of us who have young women and men in your family, please be constructive in how you teach them about sex and about sexual intercourse. If you think they do not know, you are fooling yourself. Media is introducing them to it all the time. It is now taught in school. They just give it another flavor of a name. But it is happening. You need to keep check on your children. Um, each day when I was coming up, when I was pregnant at that time, after my father left for work, my mother would pound on me and tear me down on how could I have done this to her. Why did you do this? And she would always tell me words that you are nothing and you will never amount to nothing. You'll never be nothing. And why did you do this to me? These words I heard every day during the first 3 or 4 months of my pregnancy. I was depressed. I would not eat. I would beg my father to take me to work with him. My father owned his own business. Each day he would not take me. Each day my torment began. Each day he did not take me. Each day my torment began. It was when he came home, my father, that I did not hear the damaging words from my mother. Yet after a time, it became visible to my father that something was wrong. My depression was setting in more. I was not eating. Sometimes I might have nibbled a little bit and then I just would walk away from the table, or at times I wouldn't touch anything at all. I cared for my baby as she was mine. I say she as I always knew it was a girl. I would talk to her, I would sing to her, I would caress my stomach, I would stroke my stomach, and I would cry. Once upon a time, I left the house early that day. I went for a walk. I really had no intentions or plans to come back. I am not really sure, but I knew I wanted to get out of the house. I took what money, which was mostly change, with me, and I walked up the hill and down a long street until I got to the main street. This long street, there was something that what we call now a strip mall, and it was a whole block long. And at the way down to the end of this block, there was a pharmacy store. At the time, it was called Reed's Drugstore. That's here in it was here in Baltimore. It was in Baltimore. In most drugstores in those times, there was always a luncheonette on one side. Most of the drugstores during them times and earlier, you see them even in the movies in the 40s and the 50s and so forth. They always had an area that was a luncheonette area. And some of them were small and some were big. I went into the door and I thought, it's still, and I looked around and I really liked the luncheonettes at that time. And I still think that those were the coolest places to go. You don't see them too much anymore now. It's almost faded out if they haven't already. I stood there for a while, really wondering why did I walk in there. And I looked around and then slowly walked to the counter and sat down. There was a lady there. And she just watched me for a minute while I looked at the menu. She realized I was young, and she also realized that I was pregnant. She then came over to me and asked me, what would I like to eat? She didn't say, now, what would you like to order? She said, what would you like to eat? I told her this looks good. This looks like this was good. And it had became one of my favorites. It was the turkey that was on the bread with the dressing. And you had the mashed potatoes and you had the peas and the carrots. And sometimes with string beans and gravy. It was good. She asked me what would I like to drink. And I told her a vanilla milkshake. They were the real deal of ice cream and milk without the added additives of flavorings that they do now. They even have the milkshake mixers as nostalgia products, and I promised myself to purchase one to remember that time, but more so that lady. She prepared my milkshake first, and she started on my meal. Yet before I told her this is all I had pertaining to money, she swiped it up and told me it was enough. She presented me with my milkshake and then my food. I had not eaten for days, and so I remember being weak. And I was taking my time to eat this food, and I ate everything on that plate. It was good. One of those meals you have when you are at peace with yourself. hmm That's a story right there. When I was finished, she asked me if I wanted another helping, and I told her I had no more money. Money. Yet she had already fixed me another plate. When I guess it was the owner looked over to her and walked down to the aisle or down towards the end of the pharmacy area, she told him, "I got this. She has enough." The man walked away. She gave me another helping of food, and I was eating, and she asked me my name, and I told her my name. She asked me about my baby, and I told her, I said, "It's a girl." I said, "I know this." And she told me, "Have you decided on a name?" And I told her yes, and I told her what her name was going to be. And she said, "You seem you know what you want to do." She said to me, "You have to eat for two. That baby needs to be healthy, and you have to eat for two. You can't just eat for one. You cannot sit and starve yourself or let that which is bothering you keep you from taking care of you and that baby. But more importantly, you have to be happy and at peace with yourself. Think on happy thoughts. Do what makes you happy. Then that baby girl will be happy too and born healthy in mind, body, and spirit." I listened to her. I had tears running down my face, and she gave me a tissue to wipe my tears. And she said, "Whoever or whatever was making you sad to this point, that I could not allow it to affect me because of that little girl inside of you." I understood what she meant. I ate all my food, and the lady gave me a slice of apple pie with vanilla ice cream. Yes, I ate all that up too as well. She told me to take care of myself when I got ready to leave, and she told me to come see her at any time. You see, when the Father intervenes at any time in your life, when there is a particular kind of pressure or something is on you that is out of order from where or what you need to do. This was not just something that I had to go through in life. This was something I had to go through. It's just not a mediocre, but this is something for what I'm doing right now that is telling this testimony of this and how the Father used that woman to talk to me out of my depression. She fed me just like Yahusha was fed the 5,000. And then she talked to me. If that's not a word or a way or a protocol or a strategy on being an evangelist, I don't know what is. And when the owner tried to come over, she made it clear to him that you're not gonna fuss about nothing about what this girl have or don't have. I'll put the rest of the money to this if it need be. And that's why she told him, "I got this." And I know that she paid for my second plate. She also blessed me with that milkshake, and she also blessed me with that apple pie and ice cream. I cannot remember if I ever went back to see her. I cannot remember if I ever took my baby girl past there for her to see her. For some reason, I believe I did, but I really cannot remember. But all I know is that at that time, I was in a need to be understood who I was and to be kept alive for such a time as this that I'm doing here right now. And for the well being of not just my life, but for my daughter's life. And I remember hearing her saying words that nobody should treat none of these young girls because they are pregnant or got pregnant out of the prescribed time should not be treated like this to a point of a depression like this. That they can't eat right, can't do this. She said, "This is just wrong. This is not of God." I never forgot that. When I heard her saying these things while I was walking out the door. I couldn't even tell you what she looked like, but all I know is that she was a black woman. She has probably been gone and been deceased for several years now. But I figured she was about in her middle ages. She had to be about in her prime of her wisdom, between 30 to 40 years old. I would not be surprised. I cannot see her face. I just know who she was and what she did. And I think that's all that Abba wants me to understand. That is the key. That is what is important. The words that came out was not words of fire and brimstone and condemning me because of what I had done. It was something that was to comfort me, to keep me going on and living. Yes, I did something out that I was not supposed to do, but I should have not been condemned to the point where I did not want to live, that I was so depressed that I couldn't hear nothing else. She never condemned me. She never talked down to me. She gave me words of encouragement. We have a bad habit of going around trying to do fire and brimstone and trying to find something wrong with somebody, trying to tell them they not this and not that, and you don't even check your own self. When was the last time you went through something and you did not sin? Okay, scripture said for those of us who did not sin, they could throw a stone. Can you throw a stone at anybody out here? If you have not sinned, and you be telling a lie if you threw the stone, you should be condemned to death for throwing it. I'm paraphrasing here, but I'm quite sure you understand. We so quick to throw text stones. We so quick to throw video stones. We so quick to put our mouth on a situation or our mouth on something else and go flash this here, flash that there, or somebody else's problem situation. If it's really an injustice, I can understand it. But just to find something that you want to take and throw out and put out there to the world to try to make yourself look holier than thou, then you are more in a sin than they are. And you need to repent and get yourself back on track. That's just the way it is. I went out the door and I definitely felt better. I took my time going home. I really did not feel like rushing to go home. But there was some things that had taken place back at the house before I got there. My mother got either scared or worried and she called my father. My father left the job and she had told him that I was gone too long. My father was searching for me everywhere. Finally, he just came to the house and waited, and I saw him walking across the parking lot when I was at the top of the hill while he was walking into the door. When I got to the house and I walked in, I could see on my father's face the sigh of relief that I had returned home. He stayed home that day and later took us all out, and I think we went to dinner that night. The next day, I asked him again, could I go with him again? And I didn't go, and I was home again, home alone. I was home with my mother, and after my father was gone for a time, the words started again. The pain of her speech started again. I did all that I could do to keep the joy in me, but the feelings to run away or close everything out was deeper. We lived on the top floor of this apartment complex, so anyone who was in the building could hear my mother's words. They echoed off the walls not only in the apartment itself, but also the walls in the hallway of the building. Can you imagine being in an apartment building, hearing somebody saying this day in and day out, and you're like, well, somebody please tell that woman, stop that mess. Whether you was home or not, or at work, it got out. Unknowing to my mother, my father came home. And to this day, I believe it was Abba that sent him home. When he arrived to park his car, he could hear her outside on the parking lot. And the closer he came into the building and into the building and reaching our apartment, the louder and stronger her voice got. When the key turned in the door and my father walked in, there was a relief that came over me. I literally dropped to my knees as I knew this would stop, at least for today, all of the speech that I was hearing. My father looked at my mother, and my mother was silent. He walked past me and towards their bedroom, and he asked my mother to follow him. I sat down and watched the television. I do not even know the time that passed by, but then my parents entered where I was in the front room. My mother went back into the kitchen, and my father rubbed my head and told me that he would see me later with a smile on his face when he got back in. From that day on, all those words stopped. The hollering stopped. Abba had protected 2 lives that day. 2 lives, myself and my child. I don't know the words that was passed forth between my mother and my father, but whatever it was, it stopped all of that. In other words, what was done was done. She's here, the child's here, we make the best of it, we'll take care of the child, we take care of her for now. But that is why he come to know why I wasn't eating, why I was the way I was when he came back home that day and heard for himself. Any woman that is pregnant or even planning to become pregnant should be in an environment where she is loved, she is cared for, she is pampered, love is shown to her, she is happy and healthy in mind, body, soul, and spirit. So I myself can relate to what Miriam went through in her community when she returned back from visiting her cousin Elizabeth, being with child. The strange looks she got. I'm quite sure there was head nodding, pointing in her directions. There was finger pointing. There was looks on their face of disgust. There were whispers going about. And then, of course, there was also the thoughts of dragging her and stoning her to death. That was the penalty for being pregnant and without a husband. And they considered it as an adultery. She was betrothed to someone, and they believed that where she went to visit Elizabeth, she laid with a man and turned up pregnant. So they considered that as adultery. I'll get more into that in another teaching. But I can relate to what Miriam had went through in her family, her community, when she returned back from visiting her cousin Elizabeth and she was with child. Let me continue the teaching. When Miriam was betrothed to Joseph, but before they lived together, she was found with child through the Ruach HaKodesh. Her age, it is very clear that she was betrothed to Joseph and marriage was imminent. The usual age for marriage under the law, under the Torah, which is the law and the teachings, is 13 for boys and 12 for girls. She was a young girl, probably around that age of 12, when the angel Gabriel came to visit her. She had been recently, like I said, became betrothed to a carpenter, Joseph. She was an ordinary girl of Yashrael. She was like any other young woman who became or was becoming betrothed, engaged, looking forward to marriage, preparing for that time of life of being a wife. Suddenly, but in the 6th month, Gabriel the angel was sent from the presence of Jehovah to Galilee, to a city whose name was Nazareth, to a virgin who was engaged to a man from the house of David, whose name was Joseph, and the name of the virgin was Miriam. The angel entered her presence, and he said to her, "Peace to you, full of grace. Jehovah be is with you. You are a blessed among women." But when she saw him, she was alarmed at his word, and she was wondering, "What is this greeting?" And the angel said to her, "Do not fear, Miriam, for you have found favor with Jehovah. For behold, you shall conceive, and you shall give birth to a son, and you shall call his name Yahushua. This one will be great, and he will be called the Son of the Highest, and the and of Jehovah, and will give to him the throne of David his father, and he will reign over the house of Jacob eternally, and to his kingdom there will not be an end." And Miriam said to the angel, "How will this be? For no man has known me." And the angel answered and said to her that the spirit of holiness shall come upon, and the power of the highest shall rest upon you. Therefore, he who shall be begotten in you shall be holy, and he shall be called the Son of God. And Miriam said, "Behold, I am the handmaid of the Lord Jehovah. Let it be done to me according to your word." And the angel departed from her. And Miriam said, "Behold the handmaid." The word handmaid means a personal maid or female servant, something whose essential function is to serve or assist. This was an expression of resignation to the will of Yahweh and of faith in the promise. To be the handmaiden of Ab is to be submissive and obedient, and is the same as saying, "I fully credit all that is said, and am perfectly ready to obey all the commands of Yahweh." And Miriam said, "Behold the handmaid of Yahweh," in which in these words she expresses her obedience of faith. She owns herself to be the handmaid of him and desires to obey him and be submissive to him as such, and tactfully acknowledges her meanness and great unworthiness. "Be it unto me according to thy word." She assented, assented, which means either approved, agreed, consented, allowed to what the angel said should be unto her. She earnestly desired it and firmly believed it would be. She earnestly desired it might be and firmly believed it would be. She set her Amen to the angel's message, and the angel departed from her to the heavenly regions from whence he came to his great Jehovah and master, and sent him, having dispatched the business he came about, in which he was accountable, and which was accountable to him for delivering this message. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit more on this. The angel entered her presence, and he said to her, "Peace to you, full of grace." And we know, and she said that Yahweh be with you. You are blessed among women. And the angel came in unto her into her house and into her room where she was, and said, "Hail." Now, when we understand the word hail, that's the part you need to understand. When you hear the word hail, Hail, and it's people Hail Mary and so forth, you need to understand that hail means rejoice. The word it was a greeting to the same as Yahushua did to the company of devout woman. And though used in homage, it was real. It had not necessarily um, the modern usage that was attached to this word. It was a word, it was a familiar word and a tone that the other women at first recognized, even Yehovah, as Mary Magdalene had done by his utterance of her own name. All hail means all health of soul and body, all happiness and prosperity, both temporal, spiritual, eternal, attend you. You render it peace be to you, which is the highest probable, what parable or probable, was the phrase that was used by Yahushua, since it was the common form of salutation amongst Yeshua. Yeshua. And there was other times that Yahushua used this same word in other times. And they came near unto him, being encouraged by the salutation and knowing who he was by his voice, habit, and gesture. So it's hail. It was the way it was said. It means all health, happiness, and prosperity attend thee. You also will see this in Matthew 28, chapter 9, verse. And when the angel had came and said, Hail, it is the third new covenant prophecy in Luke that was fulfilled. The next one was in verse 30 to 31. It was the fourth prophecy. It was filled verse 30 to 32, and verse 32 to 33 will be fulfilled when the Messiah reigns on the earth forever. Those are your prophetic notes. Thou art highly favored or graciously accepted or has obtained grace, not referring to electing, redeeming, justifying, pardoning, adopting, and sanctifying grace, which she had in common with the rest of us or with the rest of them at that time, but to that special and particular favor in being chosen and singled out from all other women to be the mother of the Messiah. And the angel that even to Gideon in Judges 6:12, or be with thee, an unusual form of salutation, and also in Ruth in second chapter, fourth verse, because sometimes you also hear them say that the Lord is with thee. Thou art blessed among women and will be pronounced so by other women, as she was by her cousin Elizabeth in Luke 1 and 42, and by another woman in Luke 11, chapter 27, verse. She could never have expected to hear the most incredible news that she would have a child and her son would be the Messiah. All were expecting him. There was much deliberation and expectation of his coming, but there was always the wonder in how he would come. The prophecy had talked about him, and if you watched my or listened to my other podcast on the Daystar of Bethlehem, it will tell you about it. Oh, Bethlehem Estrada, that which is the least of these, and it talked about him coming. But it was always the wonder in how he would come. Some were looking for a grown man to walk through, as did the king at that time. Although she was not able to comprehend how she would conceive the Messiah, she responded to Yehovah with humble belief and obedience. As Miriam's calling held great honor, it would demand great suffering too. There would be pain in childbirth and motherhood, as well as in the privilege of being the mother of the Messiah. We have here an account of the mother of our Messiah. Though we are not to pray to her, as many do, Because if you remember in scripture, Yahushua was said, no one can get to the Father except through him. When I talked about it in the power of attorney, you could ask these things and things to the Father in his name. We have power of attorney, but it has to be in his name. We are not to pray to her, yet we are to praise Yahuwah for her. Yahushua must be born miraculously. The angel's address means only hail. It's equivalent to peace be with thee or joy be with thee, a form of speech implying that she was signally favored and expressing joy at meeting her. Thou art the especially chosen and favored of the Most High to attend the honor Israel's mothers have so long desired. This wondrous salutation and appearance troubled her. The angel then assured her that she had found favor with Yehovah and would become the mother of a son whose name she would call Yahushua, the son of the highest one in nature and perfect with Yehovah. Her reply to the angel was the language of faith and human admiration, and she asked no sign for the confirming her faith. Without controversy, great was the mystery of godliness. Yehovah manifested in flesh. The human nature must be produced. His human nature must be produced so as it was fit that should be, which was to be taken into union with the divine nature. We must guide our desires by the word of Abba. In all conflicts, let us remember that with him, with Yehovah, nothing is impossible. Yehovah is with thee. The word is not the original, and the passage may be rendered either is with thee or be with thee, implying the prayer of the angel that all blessings from Yehovah might descend and rest upon her. Blessed art thou among women. The passage is equivalent to saying, thou art the most happy of women. Highly favored, a word only once used elsewhere, made accepted. Compare when you look at Luke 1:30. Thou hast found favor with Yehovah. As the mother of our Messiah, she was the most blessed among women in external distinction. But listen to Yahushua's own words. Nay, rather blessed are they that hear the word of Yehovah and keep it. Virgins betrothed until the consummation of their marriage were ordinarily kept in their friends. They said a friend's house, but I believe it was always the family house. And consummation, the tradition of marriage, often called simply consummation, is the first official credited act of sexual intercourse between two people, either following their marriage to each other or after a prolonged romantic attraction. It is not, when you hear the word hail, remember it is not the form of a prayer. It is an ordinary salutation, just to say, as you could say, as good moral, or the Yehovah save you, or if he is amongst us. Good habits in the soul, grace, grow in grace, singing with grace in your hearts. Look at 2 Peter 3:18 and Colossians 3 verse 16. A particle form which the word is used may signify two things. Either thou hast received grace or favor from Yehovah, or thou that art full of gracious habits. But I believe that the first seems to be, in a sense, is the right thing because it followed the verse that blessed art thou, for thou hast found favor with Yehovah. So she was virgin, and she was the object of divine grace, therefore not to be prayed to as the fountain of grace. She herself had nothing but what she received. This whole verse may seem only a salutation. There is nothing of a prayer in it. And everybody goes and uses this phrase and start praying and putting her in, and it does not mean this. It is nothing of a prayer in it. The angel only takes notice of her as a favorite of heaven, one dear unto Yehovah, with whom Yehovah was in an exceptional manner, and whom Yehovah blessed among those ordinary blessings with which he blessed other women. And when he told her, fear not, as in there at that time, and also in Genesis 26, chapter 24, verse, there's about 80 occurrences of those words of fear not. And it's usually used generally when man is being quieted because of the presence of Yehovah. Behold, the willing servant of Yehovah, excuse me, let it be unto me according to thy word. These thoughts of hers have found the most natural utterance in the phrase when she said, if it be Yehovah, let him do what seems him good. Comparing those words, it's the same when she said, let me go back. When she said, be it unto me according to thy word. These thoughts were the thoughts and the words that she spoken unto Yehovah is also in the same comparison when Samuel in 1 Samuel 3rd chapter in the 18th verse, and he stated that if it be Yehovah, let him do what seemed him good. For Miriam too was aware that her high destiny might be mingled with anguish. And when the angel departed from her, we can best appreciate the noble simplicity of the commission. The angel Gabriel was sent to her to explain to her the method or order of the conception. At length, having entered unto her, he filled the chamber where she abode with an immense light, and saluting her most courteously, and said, Hail Mary, most acceptable virgin of Yehovah, virgin full of grace, blessed art thou before all women, blessed art thou before all men hereto born. However, it seems the virgin was already knew the countenance, of angels, and was not unused to heavenly light, was neither terrified by the angelic vision, nor stupefied by the greatness of the light. Can you imagine that happening? But was troubled more at his words alone, and began to think what the salutation so unexpected could be, or what it foretold, or what end it could have. Can you imagine being in your room at night, you're there by yourself, then all of a sudden this light just comes in, and then in the middle of this light, this angel walks into your room. We don't know if he came through the door, we don't know if he came out the wall, came through the window, or wherever it was. The point is that he came to her. He was commissioned to do this and to deliver a message that came from out of heaven's throne room. What would be your reaction? Part of you all were probably sitting there and saying, I've been done passed out on the floor. They would have to wake me back up. But I believe he would steady you enough so that you would hear everything that was supposed to be delivered unto you. And that if there was, as some, when angels had appeared, they had fell over as if dead. In other words, that meant that they had fainted or was close near to fainting. And she was to be the mother of the Messiah. She was a willing servant. She trusted in Jehovah and she obeyed his call. Although she would be highly honored as the mother of the Savior, she would first know disgrace as an unwed mother. She nearly lost her fiance. Her beloved son was rejected and cruelly murdered. Her submission to Abba's plan would cost her dearly, yet she was willing to be his servant. Abba knew that Miriam was a woman of rare strength. She was the only human being who was with him, was with Yahushua throughout his entire life from birth to death. She gave birth as baby to mother and watched him die as her savior. Miriam also knew the scriptures. When the angel appeared and told her the baby would be the Messiah, she replied, I am the servant of Jehovah. May it be to me as you have said. She knew the Torah prophecies about the coming Messiah. Before I continue to teach on the influential part, this episode has increased to possibly additional episodes. Even though the first episode, which I am presenting now, is not less than the entire presentation, yet I have a need to explain specific protocols or Torah laws, the history lessons on betrothal and virginity. These are key points you have to understand on why she is such an influential woman in our lives. Talk will be on the betrothal, protecting an innocent wife, adultery, rape of a betrothed in the cities, rape and consequences of betrothed in the fields, and the rape penalty of the unbetrothed woman, and the 4 death penalty sins in relation to this. I believe this will enable you to grasp the fullness of Miriam's value, her being graced with favor, being chosen, as we are discussing in this first episode. Possibly in the second episode will be her accomplishments, her strength, and her weaknesses and life lessons if the allotment of time is allowed. If not, this may become the third episode. But I'm going to stop here so you can go back and really pull this in, because you really need to understand some things about her. And when I get more in depth to understanding being betrothed in the second episode and the protocols for marriage, that you will understand what it is. And I will tell you this, that one of the sins of the 4 sins, if a woman was betrothed, and I had said it earlier, and she became pregnant when she was with someone else. And see, when you become betrothed, you do not consummate your marriage. You do not have intercourse, or make love is the new word that I want to use, until after a prescribed time. And really, when intercourse takes place, you are really married. That did not come about, but yet she came back and was pregnant with child. So that means that he could have divorced her. She was the one shown to be in sin. That meant that they could have taken her before her father's house and they could have stoned her to death. She knew all of this when the offer came to her from Yehovah, because all of this is taught of the laws, which is part of it. She knew all of this when she told him that she would do it. When she made the statement, I am the servant of Yehovah, may it be to me as you have said. And all of this was said in pure faith. Ponder this. A question to think on till I come with the second part. If an angel came to you right now and gave you a word, are you willing to accept Yehovah's plan no matter the cost? Can you go a step further and rejoice in a plan Yehovah has given as she did, knowing it would cost you dearly? Are you willing to accept his plan no matter the cost? And can you go a step further and rejoice in the plan that he has given and he has brought to you as she did, knowing it will cost you dearly? And would you accept it and say to him the same words that she had said, that I am the servant of Yehovah, may it be to me as you have said. Abba, for I have given unto them the words which thou gavest me, and they have received them. My prayer to them is that they understood what was presented to them at this time, and that if they ever are presented a plan from you, that they will have the courage, that they will have the faith to believe in you and give the same answer that Miriam had given. That I am the servant of Yehovah, may it be to me as you have said. And Father, I thank you that those that are able to glean from this field, that they shall be able to pass forth these words and share these things, and also more so to think on them, because there are some who are listening who will get such a visitation, will hear such words that will come directly from your throne room, and give us the strength to carry out those things that you give us. In Yahushua HaMashiach's precious name. Yahweh, he who exists, will kneel before you, presenting gifts, and will guard you with a hedge of protection. Yahweh, he who exists, will illuminate the wholeness of his being toward you, bringing order, and he will provide you with love, sustenance, and friendship. Yahweh, he who exists, will lift up his wholeness of being and look upon you, and he will set in place all you need to be whole and complete. So shall they put my name upon the children of Yashrael, and I will bless them. And Amen, and it is so. Thank you for joining in this evening. I'm hoping that you were able to glean from this field. And I am your host, Chayah Janet E. Brown. And you have listened to Influential Women of the Torah, and we talked about Miriam, who is the mother of Yahushua. And I thank you for joining us, and shalom, shalom.